I destroyed them while they slept in my own bed, trusting me to keep their secrets safe. That's not how this story starts, though. That's how it ends. Right now, I'm sitting in my car outside Jimmy's diner at 11:30 on a Tuesday night, holding an envelope that's about to split my world clean in half. The private investigator I hired 3 weeks ago just handed me proof of what I already knew in my gut. My husband Daniel is cheating on me. But that's not the part that made my hands start shaking. See, I expected the hotel receipts, the photographs of him kissing Madison Cole in the parking lot behind the Methodist church. Hell, I even expected the love notes written on City Hall letterhead. That was just Daniel's particular brand of stupid arrogance. What I didn't expect was the USB drive taped to the bottom of the envelope. Mrs. Brooks, the PI had said, sliding it across the diner table like he was passing me a loaded gun. You're going to want to look at this before you decide what to do about your husband. Now I'm staring at my laptop screen, and I can feel my pulse hammering against my collar. The USB contains forged city budget documents with my digital signature, fake invoices, a detailed timeline labeled Operation Clean House, with my name circled in red at the center. This isn't just an affair. This is a countdown to my complete annihilation. The final document is an email thread between Daniel and Madison, dated 3 days ago. Everything's in place. The scandal breaks at Founders Day. Once this is done, she'll lose the mayor's seat, her reputation, and every ally she's ever had. You sure you can handle seeing her destroyed? After 15 years of living in her shadow, I'll sleep better than I have in decades. I close the laptop and lean back against the headrest. Through my windshield, I can see the warm glow of our front porch light 3 blocks away. Daniel's probably in our bed right now, maybe texting Madison about their next meeting, maybe dreaming about the political career he thinks he's about to steal from me. He has no idea I'm sitting here. No idea that in 14 days at the Founders Day Festival, they plan to destroy everything I've built. But here's what they really don't know, what they couldn't possibly understand, about a woman who clawed her way out of a trailer park and into the mayor's office. I don't just survive, I win. And when I'm done with them, they'll wish they just asked for a divorce. I should probably tell you how we got here. How a girl who used to eat cereal with water because we couldn't afford milk became the youngest mayor in Millbrook County history. How I met Daniel Brooks at a campaign fundraiser 12 years ago, when his smile made me believe I could trust someone with my heart again. But that's a story for another time. Right now, I need to get home before Daniel starts wondering where I've been. The drive through downtown Millbrook takes exactly 4 minutes. Past the courthouse where I was sworn in 3 terms running. Past Reverend Pike's church where Daniel and I got married on a scorching July morning that felt like a promise. Past Madison Cole's real estate office where the Cole and Associates sign glows like a neon target in my rearview mirror. Population 8,247 if you count the inmates at the county facility. The kind of place where everyone knows your business before you do, where gossip travels faster than the August heat that sticks to your skin like guilt. I pull into our driveway, and the motion sensor floods the front yard with harsh white light. Our house sits on Magnolia Street, 2 stories of pale yellow clapboard with green shutters, a wraparound porch that Daniel painted last spring when he was still pretending to love me. The hanging baskets of petunias I planted in May are starting to wilt in the oppressive summer heat. Inside the house feels different now that I know what I know. The hardwood floors creak differently under my feet. The family photos on the mantel, Daniel and me at the governor's ball cutting the ribbon, at the new library smiling at last year's Founders Day festival. They all feel like evidence of a lie I've been living. The television flickers blue light across the living room, some late-night news program Daniel fell asleep watching. He's sprawled on the sofa in his undershirt and boxer snoring softly, his phone face down on the coffee table beside an empty beer bottle. I stand in the doorway watching him sleep, this man who promised to love and honor me, who's been planning my destruction for God knows how long. His sandy hair is thinning on top now, and there are lines around his eyes that weren't there when we met. He looks vulnerable, like this, almost innocent. That's the thing about betrayal. It doesn't announce itself with dramatic music and smoking guns. It lives quiet in your house, eats breakfast at your table, kisses you goodbye in the morning, with the same lips that whisper poison in someone else's ear. I pick up his phone. It's password protected, but Daniel's never been creative. His birthday unlocks the screen, and there it is. A text thread with M sent 20 minutes ago. Caroline's getting suspicious. Maybe we should slow down. Relax, baby. After Saturday, she won't be able to hurt anyone. Trust the plan. Saturday. Founders Day is Saturday. I set the phone back exactly where I found it and head upstairs to our bedroom. Daniel shifts on the couch but doesn't wake up. In the distance, I can hear the cicadas starting their nightly symphony, that relentless buzzing that sounds like the earth itself is screaming. I lie in our bed, staring at the ceiling fan that clicks with each rotation, counting down the days until they try to destroy me. 13 days. They have no idea what's coming. 3 weeks ago, I hired Marcus Webb to follow my husband. Marcus is an ex-cop who lost his badge for drinking, but he's got the kind of attention to detail that only comes from years of seeing people at their worst. I paid him cash and told him I needed to know the truth about Daniel's Tuesday night bowling league. What I got back was so much worse than an affair. Marcus called me Wednesday morning while Daniel was at his real job, managing the hardware store his daddy left him. Mrs. Brooks, we need to meet. And you're going to want to bring something stronger than coffee. That afternoon in a back booth at Jimmy's Diner, Marcus spread out the evidence like he was dealing cards in a rigged game. Your husband's not just cheating, he said, sliding the first photograph across the table. He's plotting. The photo showed Daniel and Madison Cole in the parking lot behind First Methodist. Not kissing, not embracing, talking. Her hand on his chest, his head bent close to hers like they were sharing state secrets, which, as it turned out, they were. This was last Tuesday, Marcus continued, but look at this. Another photo date stamped 2 months ago. Madison handing Daniel a manila envelope outside the bank. And this. Daniel's truck parked behind Madison's office at midnight. She's been grooming him for months. The hotel receipts came next. Red Roof Inn on Highway 9. Same room every Tuesday for 6 weeks. But it was the credit card statements that made my stomach turn. Daniel had been charging these rooms to our joint account. He wanted me to find out. This whole thing was designed to humiliate me. Here's where it gets interesting, Marcus said, pulling out his tablet. I managed to clone your husband's phone. He showed me weeks of text messages between Daniel and Madison, going back to February. The early ones were flirtatious but careful. Madison complimenting Daniel on his underappreciated intelligence. Daniel complaining about living in my shadow. Standard affair material. But by March, the conversation had shifted. Madison. You know she's vulnerable right now. The budget audit is coming up. Daniel, what are you thinking? Madison, I'm thinking a smart man could help expose some irregularities. For the good of the town, of course. My blood went cold. The budget audit. I'd been working overtime for weeks preparing our financial records for the state review that happens every election year. If someone with inside access wanted to plant false evidence, there's more, Marcus said, his voice dropping. He handed me a USB drive. I found this in your husband's truck. It's encrypted, but I know a guy. The drive contained forged city documents with my digital signature, fake invoices for construction projects that never happened, a detailed plan to leak these documents to the press on Founders Day when half the state media would be in town covering the festival. But the smoking gun was an audio recording clearly made in our kitchen based on the background sounds. My voice arguing with Daniel about his drinking. Except it had been edited, chopped up and reassembled to make me sound abusive, unhinged. They'd taken months of normal marital arguments and weaponized them. The final piece was Madison's handwritten timeline, photographed from Daniel's glove compartment, Week 1, plant evidence, in City Hall computer system, Week 2, Leak documents to Channel 7, News, Week 3, release audio recording to social media, Week 4, Founders Day, public confrontation, demand resignation. At the bottom in Madison's careful script, once this is done, she'll lose everything. The mayor's seat, her reputation, her marriage. Daniel can file for divorce from a position of strength, and I'll be the obvious choice to replace her. I sat in that diner booth, surrounded by the evidence of their betrayal, and felt something shift inside my chest. Not heartbreak. I'd been expecting that. This was something sharper, cleaner. This was rage with a purpose. Mrs. Brooks, Marcus was watching me carefully. You all right? I closed the laptop and picked up the USB drive, turning it over in my fingers like a bullet I was loading into a chamber. Marcus, I said, how would you like to make some real money? Over the next 3 days, I played the perfect unsuspecting wife while Marcus dug deeper into their operation. What we found was breathtaking in its ambition and sickening in its precision. Madison Cole wasn't just some opportunistic mistress. She'd been planning this takeover for nearly a year, using Daniel as her inside man from the moment she decided to run against me in the next election. Every Tuesday night, bowling league meeting was actually a strategy session held in that hotel room where they mixed betrayal with foreplay. The depth of their scheme became clear when Marcus accessed Madison's computer through her unsecured home Wi-Fi. She'd kept detailed files on everything: my voting record, my personal relationships, even my therapy sessions after my mother died. Daniel had been feeding her intelligence about my vulnerabilities, my fears, the private moments when I let my guard down in our own home. Look at this, Marcus said, showing me Madison's digital notepad on his laptop screen. We were parked outside her real estate office at dawn, watching her unlock the front door. She's been studying you like a lab rat. The notes were clinical and cruel. Caroline's triggers being called trailer trash, or references to her background. Loses composure when questioned about her qualifications. Defensive about not having children. Daniel says she cried for hours after his mother asked about grandkids at Christmas. Weaknesses. Perfectionist tendencies make her micromanage everything. Staff complaints about her controlling behavior. Daniel says that she checks his phone goes through his pockets. Trust issues from father abandoning the family. Strategy position. Her as mentally unstable, paranoid, unfit for office. Use her own insecurities against her. But the financial motive was even more disturbing. Madison had discovered that the mayor's salary came with a housing allowance city vehicle and full family health benefits, luxuries she couldn't afford on real estate commissions alone. More importantly, the mayor controlled the city development contracts. With 3 major construction projects planned over the next 2 years, the right person could steer millions in business toward their friends. Daniel's motivation was simpler and somehow more pathetic. He resented being known as the mayor's husband. Every town function, every newspaper photo, every introduction put him in my shadow. Madison had promised him a role as her campaign manager, then deputy mayor once she won. Finally, he'd be the man with power instead of the accessory carrying my purse. The most chilling part was how methodically they'd planned my emotional destruction. They weren't just going to ruin my career. They wanted to break my spirit completely. Marcus showed me audio recordings they'd made of their planning sessions. Madison's voice, cold and calculating. The affair revelation comes first, then the financial scandal. She'll be reeling, making mistakes. That's when we hit her with the custody challenge. Custody challenge, I asked. Daniel was going to claim your mentally unstable demand. Custody of any future children, prevent you from having a family. Marcus explained. Even though you don't have kids, the public suggestion that you're unfit as a mother would destroy any woman politician in a town like this. The recordings revealed they'd even recruited fake witnesses. Tommy Garrett from the gas station was going to claim I'd been drinking during city council meetings. Sarah Mills from the library would swear I'd screamed at volunteers. They'd offered them small bribes, a few $100s each to lie under oath about my behavior. But their masterstroke was the computer evidence. Madison had a contact in the state auditor's office who would discover the forged documents during the routine budget review. The investigation would be public damaging and impossible to disprove quickly enough to save the election. As I listened to them plan my destruction with the casual tone of people ordering dinner, something crystallized inside me. This wasn't personal anymore. This was war. And they'd made one critical mistake. They'd taught me exactly how to fight it. Marcus, I said, closing the laptop, I need you to make some calls. Find out everything you can about Tommy Garrett's gambling debts and Sarah Mills' son's drug arrest, and get me a meeting with your contact at the state auditor's office. You thinking what I think you're thinking? I watched Madison through her office window organizing files, probably preparing for my execution. I'm thinking they're about to learn why you never corner a woman who's got nothing left to lose. The hardest part about knowing the truth is pretending you don't. For the past week, every conversation with Daniel has been a performance. Every kiss, goodbye, every "how was your day, honey?" all of it scripted theater, while I count down the days until they try to destroy me. 9 days left, and I can feel the weight of their deception pressing against my chest like I'm drowning in slow motion. This morning at breakfast, Daniel actually had the nerve to ask if I'm feeling all right. "You seem tense lately," he said, not looking up from his phone. He was probably texting Madison, maybe sharing some private detail about my mood that she'd use against me later. "Maybe you should take a vacation after Founders Day. You know, decompress." The irony was suffocating. He was genuinely concerned that I might be suspicious, which meant I was walking the tightrope perfectly, appearing worried enough to be believable, but not aware enough to be dangerous. Just election stress. I told him, pouring my coffee with steady hands. "You know how I get." But inside, every nerve ending is screaming. I catch myself analyzing every word he says, every gesture looking for tells I missed before. The way he angles his phone away from me. How he started showering twice a day 3 months ago. The new cologne that smells like Madison's perfume. Sandalwood and lies. The worst part is how normal he seems. Last night he fell asleep watching TV with his head in my lap while I stroked his hair and planned his destruction. He mumbled my name in his sleep, and for one horrible second, I almost forgot what he'd done to me. That's when I knew I needed help staying focused. Marcus has been invaluable, but I realized I needed someone closer. Someone who could watch when I couldn't listen when I wasn't around. So I made a choice that goes against every instinct I have about trust. I told my deputy mayor, Janet Rivers. Janet's been my right hand for 6 years, ever since she retired from teaching high school civics. She's tough, sharp, and most importantly, she despises Madison Cole with the kind of pure hatred that only comes from watching someone manipulate children. Madison used to date Janet's son before she decided he wasn't ambitious enough for her plans. "That calculating little snake," Janet said when I laid out the evidence in her kitchen yesterday evening. "I always knew she was poison, but this—" She shook her head, studying the forged documents. "Caroline, this is attempted political assassination. Having an ally changes everything. Now I'm not carrying this weight alone." Janet's been watching Madison's movements, tracking when she visits City Hall, noting who she talks to. We've discovered Madison has been cultivating relationships with 3 city council members, probably setting up her support network after my resignation. But there's something else. Something that's been nagging at me like a splinter under the skin. The plan is too sophisticated for Madison and Daniel. Too precise. Too professional. Madison's smart, but she's not this smart. Daniel couldn't organize a 1-car funeral, much less a complex political conspiracy. Someone else is pulling the strings, someone with experience in this kind of warfare. I've started paying attention to details I missed before. Phone calls that end abruptly when I enter a room. Visitors to City Hall who don't sign in properly. Small inconsistencies in Madison's timeline that suggest she's meeting with someone Marcus hasn't identified. Last night I woke up at 3 a.m. to the sound of a car door slamming in our driveway. By the time I got to the window, whoever it was had gone. But Daniel wasn't in bed beside me, and when I found him in the kitchen getting water, his hands were shaking. Couldn't sleep, he said, but his eyes wouldn't meet mine. Bad dreams. Something like that. I'm starting to think Daniel might be in over his head, that maybe he's as much a pawn in this game as I was supposed to be. The question is, who's really moving the pieces? 6 more days until Founders Day. 6 days to figure out who's behind this before they make their move. But here's what they don't know. While they've been planning my destruction, I've been planning something else entirely. Something that will make their little scheme look like child's play. Founders Day arrived with the kind of oppressive heat that makes smart people stay indoors. But downtown Millbrook was packed. Families spreading blankets on the courthouse lawn vendors, hawking funnel cakes and sweet tea, the high school marching band tuning up for their noon performance. Perfect cover for an assassination. I'd been awake since 4 a.m. going over my plan one final time. Janet arrived at my house at dawn with coffee and the look of a woman ready for war. "You sure about this?" she asked, watching me pin my campaign button to my blue dress, the same outfit I wore when I first won elections 6 years ago. I've never been more sure of anything in my life. By 10 a.m., the festival was in full swing. Daniel had left early to help set up the hardware store booth, which probably meant coordinating final details with Madison. I walked through the crowd alone, smiling and shaking hands, playing the role of the confident incumbent one last time. Every face I passed could be an enemy. Every conversation might be my last as mayor. The paranoia was crushing, but it also sharpened my focus to a razor's edge. I spotted Madison first near the bandstand, wearing a white sundress that made her look innocent and pure. She was talking to Channel 7's news crew, probably setting up for the ambush she thought was coming. When she saw me approaching her, smile could have cut glass. "Carolyn, she called out, waving like we were old friends. "Beautiful day for the festival, isn't it?" "Madison." I kept my voice warm public. "You look lovely. New dress. Oh, this old thing." She smoothed the fabric with false modesty. "I wanted to look nice for the cameras. You know how important today is for our little town." The subtext was clear. This was her moment, her stage. In her mind, I was already defeated. "Could I have a word?" she asked, taking my arm like she owned me. "Somewhere private." She led me behind the Methodist church, the same spot where Marcus had photographed her with Daniel months ago. The irony wasn't lost on either of us. "Carolyn," she began, her voice dropping to that concerned tone politicians use when they're about to stick a knife between your ribs. "I need to tell you something, and it's going to be difficult to hear." I let my face show confusion, maybe a hint of fear. "What do you mean?" "There are going to be some serious allegations made today about city finances, about your conduct in office. I want you to know that I've tried to discourage people from pursuing this, but—" She shrugged helplessly. "The truth has a way of coming out." "I don't understand. What allegations?" Madison's eyes lit up with predatory satisfaction. She thought she was watching me break in real time. "Documents have surfaced. Forged invoices, embezzled funds. And there are witnesses, Caroline, people who've seen your erratic behavior, the drinking, the verbal abuse." She placed a hand on my shoulder in mock sympathy. "I think it would be best for everyone if you step down gracefully. Before this gets ugly." I let the silence stretch between us, let her think she'd won. In the distance, I could hear the marching band starting their first song. Children laughing, the normal sounds of a community celebration that was about to become a bloodbath. Then I smiled. "Madison," I said, my voice steady as stone, "you think you're the only one with receipts." Her confidence flickered for just a moment. "What do you mean?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the screen. A a video file ready to play. Her face went pale as she recognized the hotel room where she and Daniel had spent so many Tuesday nights. "You recorded us," she whispered. "I recorded everything. Your planning sessions, your fake witness bribes, your contact at the state auditor's office." I stepped closer, close enough to smell her fear mixing with that sandalwood perfume. "Did you really think you could destroy me without consequences?" The blood drained from her face completely. Behind us, I could hear footsteps approaching. Daniel, right on schedule, coming to check on Madison's progress. "You're bluffing," she said, but her voice cracked. "Am I?" I held up my phone again, this time showing her a text message. "Package delivered to Channel 7 News. They'll be ready for your interview in 5 minutes." That's when Daniel rounded the corner and saw us together. The look on Madison's face told him everything he needed to know. "What's happening?" he asked, his voice small and scared. I looked at my husband, this man who'd shared my bed while planning my destruction, and felt nothing but ice-cold satisfaction. "What's happening, Daniel, is that your girlfriend just learned what happens when you try to kill a woman who refuses to die. What happened next wasn't pretty, but it was beautiful in its precision." While Madison and Daniel stood frozen behind the Methodist church, processing the reality that their perfect plan had been turned against them, I walked back to the festival like nothing had happened, but everything was already in motion. At exactly 11:47 a.m., Channel 7's investigative reporter Jenny Walsh received an anonymous package containing audio recordings, financial documents, and time-stamped photographs. By noon, she was on live television with a breaking news report that would end 2 lives as effectively as a bullet to the head. "We've obtained evidence of an elaborate conspiracy to frame Mayor Caroline Brooks for financial crimes she did not commit," Jenny announced from the courthouse steps, her voice carrying across the festival grounds through the loudspeakers. "The evidence suggests real estate agent Madison Cole and the mayor's husband Daniel Brooks orchestrated this plot to seize political power." I watched from the bandstand as heads turned, conversations stopped, and people pulled out their phones to record what was happening. The marching band had gone silent. Even the children seemed to sense that something momentous was unfolding. Jenny continued reading from the prepared statement I'd given her. Audio recordings reveal Cole and Brooks discussing forged city documents, bribed witnesses, and a plan to publicly humiliate the mayor during today's festival. We'll have more details at 6, but for now, we can confirm that both Cole and Brooks are being sought by authorities for questioning. That was Marcus's cue. I spotted him near the hardware store booth badge, visible moving toward Daniel with the kind of purposeful stride that makes guilty people run. But Daniel wasn't running. He was standing in the middle of Main Street like a man who'd been struck by lightning, staring at the news van with his mouth open. Madison, however, had vanished, but I knew where she'd gone. See, the thing about desperate people is they become predictable. Madison would run to her office to destroy evidence, then to her house to pack. She'd take Highway 9 toward the interstate, probably planning to disappear until this blew over. She wouldn't make it that far. At 12:15, while Jenny Walsh was interviewing shocked festival goers about the mayor's vindication, Madison Cole's BMW was pulled over 3 miles outside town limits. The state trooper who stopped her found a suitcase full of cash-forged documents bearing my signature and audio equipment used to create the fake recordings. But the real masterpiece was what happened to her reputation. Remember those fake witnesses she'd bribed to testify against me, Tommy Garrett and Sarah Mills? Well, it turns out they were more afraid of perjury charges than they were loyal to Madison. When Marcus approached them yesterday with evidence of their planned false testimony, they couldn't cooperate fast enough. By 2 p.m., Tommy was on Channel 7, admitting he'd been paid $500 to lie about me drinking during city council meetings. "She never touched a drop," he said, looking ashamed. "Madison Cole offered me money to say she did, and I needed it for my gambling debts." Sarah Mills was even more damaging. She revealed that Madison had approached her months ago with a detailed plan to destroy my reputation. She said Caroline Brooks was too uppity for her own good, that someone needed to put her back in her place. She knew exactly what lies would hurt her most. But I wasn't finished. While Madison sat in a county jail cell and Daniel hid in his house with the curtains drawn, I initiated the psychological warfare that would haunt them forever. The first gift arrived at Daniel's house Tuesday evening. A small package, no return address, containing a USB drive. When he plugged it into his computer, he found every text message he'd ever sent Madison, every email, every photo from their hotel meetings. All of it organized in folders labeled with dates and locations like evidence in a murder trial. The note with it was simple. I know everything you did. I know everything you said. I know everything you planned. Sleep well. Madison got her gift Wednesday morning in her cell. A manila envelope slipped under her office door before her secretary arrived. Inside, photographs of her and Daniel together, but not the romantic ones Marcus had taken. These were surveillance photos showing them meeting with Tommy Garrett, visiting the state auditor's office, planning their conspiracy in locations they thought were private. The note with hers was even simpler. You taught me how to destroy someone completely. Thank you for the education. But the psychological torment was just the beginning. I'd spent months learning their weaknesses, their fears, their secrets. Madison's real estate license was suspended pending investigation. Her clients fled to other agents. Her mortgage payments started bouncing as her business collapsed overnight. Daniel lost his job when word spread that he couldn't be trusted. Who wants to buy hardware from a man who betrays his own wife? The store his father built over 30 years closed within a month. Their friends abandoned them. Their families were humiliated. Every door in Millbrook County slammed shut in their faces. And through it all, I maintained perfect public composure. Interviews about my vindication were gracious and forgiving. I'm just grateful the truth came to light, I told reporters. I hold no ill will toward anyone. Privately, though, I made sure they knew I was watching. Anonymous phone calls at 3 a.m. with nothing but the sound of cicadas and distant footsteps. Their own words played back to them from hidden speakers. Shadows moving past their windows at night that could have been anyone, but probably weren't. Madison cracked first. By the fourth week, she was calling the sheriff's office daily, reporting phantom threats, mysterious packages, voices in her walls. When deputies found nothing, she sounded increasingly unstable, increasingly paranoid. Daniel lasted longer, but not much. His drinking got worse. He started talking to himself, jumping at shadows, checking locks obsessively. Friends who still spoke to him said he'd aged 10 years in 2 months. The beauty of psychological warfare is its deniability. I never threatened them directly, never broke any laws. I simply created an atmosphere where they understood with crystal clarity that their actions had consequences, that I was always watching, always remembering, always 3 steps ahead. And the most terrifying part for them was knowing it would never end. By November, Madison and Daniel had become cautionary tales in Millbrook County. The kind of story mothers told their daughters about what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you. Madison plea bargained down to fraud charges and got 2 years probation, but the real punishment was social death. She moved to Atlanta, where nobody knew her name or her shame. Last I heard, she was working retail and living in a studio apartment, a ghost of the ambitious woman who thought she could steal my life. Daniel filed for divorce in October, citing irreconcilable differences. The irony was delicious. He got exactly what he wanted, just not how he wanted it. He lost the house in the settlement, lost his business, lost his standing in the community. He moved in with his sister in Birmingham and started drinking full-time. But here's the thing about destroying people completely. It changes you too. I won re-election in a landslide, running unopposed after what the papers called the conspiracy revelation. The town rallied around me like I was some kind of folk hero. I should have felt victorious, vindicated, triumphant. Instead, I felt hollow. The satisfaction of revenge had lasted exactly as long as it took Madison to disappear from my rearview mirror. What remained was the knowledge of what I was capable of, what I'd become in the pursuit of justice. I'd always been ruthless in politics, but this was something deeper, darker. I'd tasted absolute power over other human beings, and it was intoxicating. 3 weeks after the election, Daniel was found dead in his sister's garage. Carbon monoxide poisoning, they said. Accident or suicide. The coroner couldn't be sure. His truck was running garage door closed, no note left behind. I attended the funeral in a black dress playing the role of the grieving ex-wife with perfect composure. But inside, I felt nothing. Not sadness, not guilt, not relief. Just a cold calculation about how his death would affect my public image. That's when I knew I'd won too completely. That's when I realized someone else had been playing this game all along, using me, just like I'd used Madison and Daniel. Someone who understood that the best revenge isn't just destroying your enemies. It's making them destroy themselves while you watch from the shadows. Someone who'd been 3 steps ahead of even me. The package arrived on a Tuesday morning in December, 3 months after I buried my husband, and 2 months after I stopped sleeping through the night. No return address, no postmark, just a manila envelope slipped under my office door before dawn. Inside, a single photograph and a note that made my blood turn to ice water. The photograph showed 3 people at a restaurant table, heads bent together in conversation. Madison Cole, Daniel Brooks, and Janet Rivers, my trusted deputy, my ally, my friend. The note was handwritten in Janet's careful script, the same handwriting I'd seen on hundreds of memos over 6 years. Congratulations, Caroline. You played your part perfectly. I sat in my mayor's chair staring at that photograph and felt my entire reality shift like tectonic plates grinding against each other. Every conversation with Janet, every piece of advice she'd given me, every moment I'd trusted her with my secrets. All of it reframed in a single horrifying instant. She'd been there from the beginning. When I first suspected Daniel's affair, Janet was the one who suggested I hire a private investigator. When I discovered the conspiracy, she was the one who encouraged me to fight back instead of confronting them directly. When I planned my revenge, she was the one who helped me refine it, make it more devastating, more complete. I'd thought I was the puppet master pulling everyone's strings, but I was just another puppet dancing to Janet's tune. The second photograph in the envelope showed the 3 of them again, but this time the timestamp was from 8 months ago. Before the affair, before the conspiracy, before any of it began. Janet wasn't reacting to Madison and Daniel's plot. She was orchestrating it. My hands were shaking as I reached for my phone to call her, then stopped. If Janet had been manipulating me for months, what was I supposed to say? How do you confront someone who's 3 moves ahead of you at all times? That's when I heard her voice in the outer office talking to my secretary about scheduling next week's budget meeting. The same calm, competent tone she'd used when helping me destroy 2 people's lives. Janet, I called out, my voice somehow steady. Could you come in here, please? She appeared in my doorway with her usual warm smile, carrying a steaming cup of coffee and a stack of files. The perfect picture of loyalty and dedication. Morning, Caroline. You look tired. Everything all right? I held up the photograph. Her smile didn't waver for even a second. I was wondering when you'd figure it out, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk, like we were discussing the weather. You're sharper than I gave you credit for. Most people never see the strings. Why? The word came out as barely a whisper. Because you needed to become who you really are, Janet said simply. The woman who clawed her way out of a trailer park was always there, but you'd gone soft, comfortable. You were becoming complacent, and that made you vulnerable to real threats. She gestured to the photograph. Madison and Daniel were small-time players with delusions of grandeur, but there are others out there, Caroline, people with real power who see small-town mayors as obstacles to be removed. I needed you to remember how to fight. So you would arrange for my husband to betray me. I planted seeds. Madison was already ambitious, and Daniel was already weak. I simply introduced them at the right moment in the right context and let nature take its course. They chose to betray you. I just made sure they'd do it stupidly enough that you could destroy them. The horror of it was breathtaking. Not just that she'd manipulated me, but how completely. Every emotion I'd felt, every decision I'd made, every moment of rage and satisfaction and hollow victory, all of it choreographed by a woman I trusted with my life. The audio recordings, the evidence Marcus found, how much of it was real. All of it. That's the beauty of a perfect manipulation, Caroline. You don't create lies. You create circumstances where people reveal their true nature. She leaned forward, her eyes bright with something that might have been pride or might have been madness. And now you know what you're truly capable of. When the next threat comes, and it will come, you'll be ready. I stared at her across my desk, this woman who'd been like a mother to me, who'd guided my career and held my hand through my darkest moments, who'd turned my entire life into a chess game where I'd never even realized I was a piece. What if I decide you're the next threat? Janet's smile widened, and for the first time I saw something cold and ancient behind her eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," she said, standing up and smoothing her skirt, "who do you think taught you everything you know?" She walked to the door, then paused and looked back. "The budget meeting is at 2. Don't be late." The door closed with a soft click, leaving me alone with the photographs and the terrible understanding that I'd never been the hunter. I'd always been the prey. Outside my window, I could hear the sound that had haunted my nights for months. Slow, deliberate footsteps walking away in the distance. But now I knew whose footsteps they were. And I knew they'd be back.